Dave.
Hey there.
Hey, I just want to let you know that I have my extra license.
You got it?
Congratulations.
Yes, I took the test Saturday and passed it.
Wonderful. Congratulations.
That's awesome.
You did the hard work. You did the studying. And I got back to them, and yes, they're on the list. Yep. Yep. Thank you. All right, you enjoy yours. Okay. See you on the bains. 73. We're about 4 minutes away. YouTube should be rolling. Look in the courses, under the courses list. Look under the extra class. Okay, there you go. That's the music we play. Thank you. Spotlight myself there. Oh, good. Excellent. Yes. That's important. That's one way to do it. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yep, I've got mine. And we have repeaters here in this area, so it's kind of nice. Excellent. Excellent. Well, Ham's Helping Hams, that's what it's all about. You know, we talk about ham spirit, but that's the whole deal, that, you know, we're like-minded individuals, and we have the interest in a lot of stuff you can't do by yourself. You need help, and so this works. And you'll give back in another way sometime. Yeah. Well, happy Tuesday evening once again. Here we are for our very last class for the Amateur Extra. We've been busy over the last, 16 weeks, however long it was, to do the 11 chapters. The 11 chapters in this book. Remember when you first got this book, the American Radio Relay League License Manual for the Extra Class, the 13th edition? You saw how thick it was, and you went, I'll never get through that. But we did. We made it through. If you're just dropping in and joining us, please take a look at my YouTube channel, W4EEY, cleverly named, and look in the Amateur Extra. Under courses, look for Amateur Extra, and you'll see the entire series of videos. And you can go through one by one and study and upgrade from your general class or advanced class license here in the United States to the Amateur Extra. So I'm your instructor tonight, Gary, and we're going to be going over nothing in the book tonight and everything in the book. We're going to take 2 practice tests tonight. 50 questions, and these are the exact questions and exact answers that you might see on your test. The tests that we're going to take were generated by the ARRL exam review website. I just had them generate some tests and captured those and brought them in. And so the plan is for you to get pencil and paper or whatever you want to use to write, and we'll be writing down 1 through 50, the 50 questions, and then write down A, B, C, or D. Just remember that, as I said, these are the questions and the answers, but the answers will not be in the same order. So you can't memorize A, B, C, or D. That doesn't work. If you haven't figured out where you're going to take your test, or if you just kind of dropped into this video and you go, I'd like to know more about it, Bruce, if you take the laptop, you can use these resources. Just Google search for your local amateur radio club, or just say ham club in your city. Or you can use the ARRL.org, their website, to find a club in your area. And then for test sessions, you can use hamstudy.org/sessions. Put in your zip code and it'll tell you where the nearest test sessions are in your area. And that big book that we went through had 602 questions. Questions in the question pool for the extra class, and so then they take from that 602, put it into a mix with 50 questions, and that's what we'll do tonight. So this is practice test number 5. What? We did practice test number 4 last week, and then we'll do 5 and 6 tonight. And practice tests 1, 2, and 3 were also provided in the handouts folder for last week. So you'll actually have 6 practice tests that we will have done together that are available for you to review. And then you can take practice tests on your own at the exam review website from the ARRL, or there are apps for your phone. But take the practice tests, get comfortable, get proficient, and then go take your test and get your upgrade. We promised you Amateur Extra by Christmas, and you're going to come very close to it, I'm sure. All right, so that blank piece of paper, numbering 1 through 50. I want to acknowledge Dave Ivy's with us tonight. He's in the Zoom classroom. He'll be monitoring the chat on YouTube, and we'll hear from him maybe a little later briefly. So anyway, good luck. Whoops. Well, that was a big jump. I meant to say good luck. Don't sweat it. And I'll be showing you the questions. Oh, remember, if you have your camera on and you're done answering the question, just raise your hand a little bit and then I can see that. And that'll tell me to move on. If I go too fast, just unmute and tell me slow down. I can do that. And at the end, we'll go back and go over any questions that you want to review. All right, so here we are. I'll push the button once, lightly. Here's question number 1. And I will be reading the question and the right answer when we get to the answers section for those who might be visually impaired. All right. And here is question number 2. Okay. And question number 3. And here comes question number 4. Remember, we move along at a clip here because it's a TV program. You'll have as much time as you need when you take your actual test. Question 4. And question 5. This is a diagram, and on the Smith chart shown, what is the only straight line? And question number 6. And question 7 is another pictorial. What will be the output voltage of the circuit shown if R1 is 1,000 ohms, RF is 10,000 ohms, and 0.23 volts DC is applied to the input? And question 8. And question 9. And here is question 10. And next up, question 11. And coming up is question 12. And now question 13. And question 14. And question 15. And question 16. And now question 17. And question 18. And question 19, schematic symbols. Which is the symbol for a NOR gate? And here is question 20. And question 21. And question 22. And question 23. And here is question 24. And now, question 25. And 26. And question 27. And here we go with question 28. And question 29. And question 30. And question 31. And here we go with question 32. And now, question 33. And question 34 is another diagram. What is the front to back ratio of the radiation pattern shown? And 35. And question 36. And question 37. And here we go with question 38. Next up is question 39. And question 40. And here is question 41. And now, question 42. Question 43. All right. Question 44. And question 45. And here's question 46. Question 47. And Question 48. Question 49. And question 50. Are there any questions you'd like me to go back to?
9.
9, all right. Sorry, I don't know a more elegant way to do this. There's question 9.
Question number 7.
All right. Here's question 7. Is there another? We moved kind of fast. It's no problem. If you're watching live on YouTube, if you put it in the chat, I'll be able to see what number you want to see, and I can go back to that. All right, hearing nothing, let's see how we did. How did we do? Okay. Come back to me just for a second, Bruce. So last week, if you remember the exam that we took, I got one wrong. The instructor got one wrong. Well, I did it again, different. And you can learn from this. You can check your paper after you go through all of them and make sure you don't leave one blank, because I left the first one blank for some reason. I don't know. Anyway, what does the packet path wide 3-1 designate? This is question 1. The answer is D. 3 digipeater hops are requested with 1 remaining. Don't leave them blank. Question 2. Which of the following noise figure values is typical for a low noise UHF preamplifier? 0.5 dB, 2D. And 3, over what range of frequencies are the FCC human body RF exposure limits most restrictive? VHF, 30 to 300 megahertz, 3A. And 4, what function is performed by a fast Fourier transform? Converting signals from the time domain to the frequency domain, 4A. And on our Smith chart, on this one, what is the only straight line? That is the resistance axis, 5D. 6, how is positive feedback supplied in a Colpitts oscillator? Colpitts starts with C, and that suggests through a capacitive divider, 6A. 7, what will be the output voltage of the circuit if R1 is 1,000 ohms, RF is 10,000 ohms, and 0.23 volts DC is applied? All right, so you got to know the gain, which is the big number divided by the little number, which is then gain of 10. And note it's applied to the minus input on this op amp, so it's going to be 0.23 times 10, or 2.3, but it's going to be minus 2.3 volts, 7B. And which of the following indicates that a silicon NPN junction transistor is biased on? You have a base to emitter voltage of approximately 0.6 to 0.7 volts, 8B. And 9, why are optoisolators often used in conjunction with solid-state circuits that control 120 volt AC? The isolators provide an electrical isolation between a control circuit and the circuit being switched. So we're talking about switching power supplies here. 9B. And 10, what causes a junction diode to fail from excessive current? Excessive junction temperature. It gets hot. 10D. It lets the smoke out. 11, what does the value of B sub Z represent? It's the north-south strength of the interplanetary magnetic field, 11B. And 12, when constructing a beverage antenna, which of the following factors should be included in the design to achieve good performance at the desired frequency? It should be at least one wavelength long, 12B. And 13, which of the following HF digital modes can be used to transfer binary files? That would be PACTOR, 13D. And 14, what does the impedance 50 minus J25 represent? It represents 50 ohms of resistance in series with 25 ohms of capacitive reactance, 14C. And 15, how does the maximum range of ground wave propagation change when the signal frequency is increased? As the frequency is increased, the maximum range decreases, 15B. And what describes orthogonal frequency division multiplexing? It's a digital modulation technique using subcarriers at frequencies chosen to avoid intersymbol interference, 16A. And 17, where should a station AC surge protector be installed? At the single point ground panel, 17D. And 18, what devices are commonly used as VHF and UHF parasitic suppressors at the input and output terminals of a transistor HF amplifier? Those would be ferrite beads, 18D. And 19, in this figure, which is the schematic symbol for a NOR gate? That would be symbol number 4, so 19A. And 20, what is the purpose of making a Yagi's parasitic elements either longer or shorter than resonance? You do this to control phase shift, 20D. And 21, what can be done to prevent unwanted oscillations in an RF power amplifier? You can install parasitic suppressors and or neutralize the stage, 21D. 22, what impedance does a 1/8 wavelength transmission line present to an RF generator when the line is open at the far end? It is a capacitive reactance, 22A. And 23, which of these transmission line impedances would be suitable for constructing a quarter wave Q section for matching a 100 ohm feed point impedance to a 50 ohm transmission line? You pick a point midway between the two, so that would be 75 ohms, 23C. And 24, what is an isotropic radiator? It's a hypothetical lossless antenna having equal radiation intensity in all directions, used as a reference for antenna gain, 24B. And 25, what determines the PEP to average power ratio of an unprocessed single sideband phone signal? The speech characteristics. 25D. And 26, how much does increasing a receiver's bandwidth from 50 hertz to 1000 hertz increase the receiver's noise floor? Well, that change represents a difference of 10 times 2. Well, 10 times is 10 dB and 2 is 3 dB, so they add together, it's 13 dB, 26D. And 27, which of the following is used to reduce or eliminate intermodulation interference in a repeater caused by a nearby transmitter? A properly terminated circulator at the output of the repeater's transmitter. 27D. And 28, which of the following cannot be transmitted over an amateur radio mesh network? You can't transmit it anywhere else either. Messages encoded to obscure their meaning. No codes or ciphers. 28A. And 29, what is the direction of an ascending pass for an amateur satellite? From south to north. 29A. And 30, why is it not legal to transmit a 3 kilohertz bandwidth USB signal with a carrier frequency of 14.348? And the answer is the upper 1 kilohertz of that signal will be outside of the 20-meter band if you do that, so 30A. And 31, which of the following can divide the frequency of a pulse train by 2? That would be a flip-flop, or more correctly, a JK flip-flop with a clock input, so 31C. And 32, which of the following can be used to generate FM phone signals? That's reactance modulation right at the local oscillator. So reactance modulation of a local oscillator will give you FM, 32B. And 33, what should a VE do if a candidate fails to comply with the examiner's instructions? Immediately terminate the candidate's examination, 33A. And here we're looking, what is the front to back ratio of the pattern? Okay, so the major lobe is on the 0 line and the back lobe there is, well, it's not quite 30, so we'll say 28 dB, 34A. And 35, what is the magnitude of the current at the input of a parallel RLC circuit at resonance? It will be at its minimum, 35C. And 36, what is the phase relationship between current and voltage for reactive power? They are 90 degrees out of phase, 36A. And 37, which of the following test instruments is used to display spurious signals or IMD products generated by a single sideband transmitter? That would be a spectrum analyzer, 37C. And 38, why is a switching type power supply less expensive and lighter than an equivalent linear power supply? Well, it's the high-frequency inverter design. It uses much smaller transformers and filter components for an equivalent power output, 38D. And 39, what is a crystal lattice filter? That's a filter for low-level signals made using quartz crystals, 39C. And 40, how does the radiation pattern of a horizontally polarized antenna vary with increasing height above ground? The takeoff angle of the lowest elevation lobe will decrease, or decreases, 40D. Higher up, elevation angle goes down. And 41, how is an interlaced scanning pattern generated in a fast scan NTSC television system? by scanning odd-numbered lines in one field and even-numbered lines in the next, 41C. And 42, which of the following was required in order to operate in accordance with CEPT rules in foreign countries where permitted? This is Europe. You have to have your passport, you have to have your FCC license, and you must have a copy of FCC Public Notice DA 16-1048. That's that 3-language translation sheet that explains amateur radio, 42A. And 43, how much power is being absorbed by the load when a directional power meter connected between a transmitter and a terminating load reads 100 watts forward and 25 watts reflected? Big number minus the little number, 75 watts, 43D. And 44, what is the common cause of overmodulation of audio frequency shift keying signals? Excessive transmit audio levels, 44A. And 45, which amateur stations are eligible to operate as Earth stations? Any amateur station subject to the privileges of the class of operator license held by the control operator, 45B. And 46, what indicates the delay between a control operator's action and the corresponding change in the transmitted signal? We call that latency. 46C, latency. And 47, which of these emission modes is best suited for auroral propagation? Morse code, specifically high-speed Morse code, 47B. CW. And 48, what is the definition of symbol rate in a digital transmission? It is the rate at which the waveform changes to convey information, 48D. And 49, within what distance must an amateur station protect an FCC monitoring facility? 1 mile, no transmissions within 1 mile, 49A. And 50, what is the relationship between the AC current through an inductor and the voltage across an inductor? Eli the Iceman, remember, Eli, voltage leads current by 90 degrees, 50A. So you need 37 to pass, 37 correct, or no more than 13 wrong, that's 74%. Smiling? Thumbs up? Hope so. In any event, I'm so proud of you. Let's keep going. We've got one more practice test and then we'll be all done. So let's go ahead and take 5 minutes, get up and move around, stretch, get something to drink, come on back, and we'll do this for the very last time. Thanks. right. Without further ado, let's go ahead and see what we can do with practice test number 6. That's right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here we go. Again, 50 questions with your blank sheet of paper. And these will be the actual questions, actual answers, just not in the same order on your actual test. So, best of luck to you. Here we go with question 1. And question 2. And now question 3. And here is question 4. And question 5. And question 6. Question 7. And question 8. And again, when you take your test, you'll have as much time as you need, and you'll probably have a calculator. Give a little extra time on this one. All right, we can come back to it. Question 9. And question 10. And question 11. And here we go with question 12. And 13 is a schematic symbol question. Which is the schematic symbol for a NAND gate? question 14 is another diagram pictorial here. At which point best represents the impedance of a series circuit consisting of a 400 ohm resistor and a 38 picofarad capacitor at 14 megahertz. 400 ohm resistor, 38 picofarad capacitor at 14 megahertz. And question 15 is another diagram. What type of antenna pattern is shown? And here is question 16. And now, question 17. And now, question 18. And here we go with question 19. And here's question 20. And now on to question 21. And question 22. And question 23. And here we go with question 24. And now, question 25. And question 26. question 27. And question 28. And now, question 29. Question 30. And here is question 31. Question 32. And question 33. And question 34. And question 35. And here we go with question 36. And question 37. And question 38. And question 39. And here we have another pictorial. On the Smith chart, what is the name for the large outer circle on which the reactance arcs terminate? is question 41. And now 42. And now 43. And here is 44. And 45. And 46. And next up, 47. And 48. $49. And question 50. Are there any questions you'd like me to go back to?
43, please.
43. Another?
Question
46.
6. Go ahead.
I heard 6, so we'll do 6 first.
6.
Then we'll come back. We have all night. There's 6.
Thank you.
You bet. Another?
20, 30.
30.
Okay, and then 47.
And 47.
And 26.
All right. Let's give a second here on that one. 26, right?
Yes.
There we go. Are there any others? All right, let's see how we did. All right, here we go. So number 1, which of the following HF digital modes can be used to transfer binary files? PACTOR 1A. There were some repeats, by the way, from this test and the other tests, so that might have helped. Here's 2. Which of the following describes an optical shaft encoder? That's a device that detects rotation by interrupting a light source with a patterned wheel. 2C. 3. What is a Class D amplifier? It's an amplifier that uses switching technology to achieve high efficiency. 3C.
Should have known that.
And 4, which trigger mode is most effective when using an oscilloscope to measure a linear power supply's output ripple? Line mode, that refers to power line, 4B. And 5, what kind of receiver can be used to receive and decode SSTV using the Digital Radio Mondiale protocol? A single sideband receiver, 5A. And 6, what is the most useful characteristic of a Zener diode? It's a constant voltage drop under conditions of varying current, 6A. And 7, which circuit is bistable? That's a flip-flop. It can be flipped or it can be flopped, 7B. And 8, what is the effective radiated power of a repeater station with 150 watts power output, 2 dB feed line loss, 2.2 dB duplexer loss, and 7 dBd antenna gain? When you work that all out to find out the dB and convert that with the 150 watts you had started, it's 286 watts, 8A.
Can you go back to B again? What was the answer on B? I'm sorry, on 5.
5, yes, we can do that. Single sideband receiver, A,
Got it.
5A.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. 9, which of the following factors most affects the accuracy of a frequency counter? What you pay for is time-based accuracy, 9D. And 10, which type of detector is used for demodulating single sideband signals? That's a product detector, 10B. And 11, how do APRS stations relay data? They do it through packet digital repeaters, 11D. And 12, under what circumstances may a dealer sell an external RF power amplifier capable of operation below 144 megahertz if it has not been granted FCC certification? C, the amplifier is constructed or modified by an amateur radio operator for use at an amateur station, 12C. And 13, which is the schematic symbol for a NAND gate? That is number 2, so it's 13C. And here, on which point best represents the impedance of a series circuit consisting of a 400 ohm resistor and a 38 picofarad capacitor at 14 megahertz. Let me turn on my laser pointer. All right. So 400 ohms resistance is going to be on the x-axis, and remember we only have positive resistance. There is no such thing as negative resistance. So there's 400 ohms, and 38 picofarad capacitor is going to be below, because it's a capacitor, it's minus, so 0.4, 14A. And 15, what type of antenna pattern is shown? That's an elevation pattern, 15B. And 16, when using a transceiver that displays the carrier frequency of phone signals, which of the following displayed frequencies represents the lowest frequency at which a properly adjusted LSB emission will be totally within the band? All those words for 3 kilohertz above the lower band edge, 16C. And 17, what is the purpose of a step-start circuit in a high-voltage power supply? To allow the filter capacitors to charge gradually, or in steps, 17B. 18, which of the following frequency ranges is most suited for meteor scatter? 28 to 148 megahertz. Think 6 meters, 18C. And 19, why are odd order intermodulation products created within a receiver of particular interest compared to other products? They're the pesky ones because odd order products of 2 signals in the band being received are also likely to be within the band. They're very close by, so 19A. And 20, how can unwanted ringing and audio instability be prevented in an operational amplifier audio filter? Restrict both gain and Q, 20C. And 21, which of the following types of noise are removed by a noise blanker? That would be impulse noise, pop, 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 21C. And 22, what parameter evaluates distortion of an audio frequency shift key signal caused by excessive input audio levels? We measure that with intermodulation distortion, 22D. And which describes a Pi-L network? It's a pi network with an additional output series inductor, 23D. And 24, which of the following contacts may be confirmed through the logbook of the world? All of those. Contacts between a U.S. station and non-U.S., contacts for worked all states, credit, and special events contacts. All of those. 24D. And 25, which amateur stations are eligible to be telecommand stations of space stations? Any amateur station so designated by the space station licensee, subject to the privileges of the class of the operator license, but in this case, 25D. And 26, which of the following is a type of analog to digital conversion? One type is the use of successive approximation, 26A. And 27, what is a depletion mode field effect transistor? It's an FET that exhibits current flow between source and drain when no gate voltage is applied. When you apply voltage, it depletes the current flow, so 27B. And 28, how much does increasing a receiver's bandwidth from 50 to 1000 hertz increase the receiver's noise floor? This was from the previous test, 13 dB, 28A. 10 times and then 2 times. And 29, what is the approximate bandwidth of a 13 word per minute international Morse code transmission? It's about 52 hertz, 29B. And 30, where is trans-equatorial propagation most likely to occur? A, between points separated by 2,000 to 3,000 miles over a path perpendicular to the geomagnetic equator, 30A. That was very active in the 10-meter contest this last weekend. And 31, what happens to the radiation pattern of an unterminated long wire antenna as the wire length is increased? Additional lobes form, with major lobes increasingly aligned with the axis of the antenna, 31A. And 32, what limitations may the FCC place on an amateur station if its signal causes interference to domestic broadcast reception? Quiet hours. The amateur station must avoid transmitting during certain hours on frequencies that cause the interference, 32B. And 33, what characteristics of mimics make them a popular choice for VHF through microwave? Well, they have controlled gain, low noise figure, and constant input and output impedance over a specified frequency range, 33A. And 34, how long must an operator wait after filing a notification with the Utilities Technology Council before operating on the 2200 or 630 meter bands? 30 days. Operators may operate after 30 days, provided they have not been told that their station is within 1 kilometer of PLC systems that are using those frequencies, so 34A. And 35, how does the VHF-UHF radio horizon compare to the geographic horizon? It's approximately 15% farther, 35D. And 36, what is meant by the mode of an amateur radio satellite? It has to do with the satellite's uplink and downlink frequency bands, 36B. And 37, why should antenna loading coils have a high ratio of reactance to resistance? You do this to maximize efficiency. By reducing the R, you get maximum efficiency, 37B. And 38, which is generally true for 160 and 80 meter receiving antennas? Remember that graph I showed you where the noise is so high in the lower frequencies? Atmospheric noise is so high that directivity is much more important than having an antenna that has no gain or has losses even. So 38B. And 39, and the beauty of the beverage antenna is that it's immune to noise. That was the point there. All right, 39. Which of these transmission line impedances would be suitable for conducting a quarter wave Q section for matching 100 ohms to 50 ohms? Again, midway between the two, 75 ohms, 39A. And it's a quarter wavelength long length. All right, on the Smith chart, what is the name for the large outer circle on which the reactance arcs terminate? That is the reactance axis, 40A. And 41, what is the term for the time required for the capacitor in an RC circuit to be charged to 63.2% of the applied voltage or to discharge to 36.8% of its initial voltage? That is a time constant, or one time constant, 41B. And 42, why are cores of inductors and transformers sometimes constructed of thin layers? I blame eddy. To reduce power loss from eddy currents in the core, 42C. And 43, where should a shock-absorbing lanyard be attached to a tower when working above ground? Remember, when you're climbing in your harness, you have two lanyards. One is always attached to the tower, and then when you finally get to your position, you have a shock-absorbing lanyard that goes up over your head. So it's above the climber's head level, 43B. And 44, for which types of out-of-pocket expenses do the Part 97 rules state that VEs and VECs may be reimbursed? For preparing, processing, administering, and coordinating an exam for an amateur radio operator license. Normally $10, $15, something like that. 44A. And 45, why is an anti-aliasing filter required in a decimator? It removes high-frequency signal components that would otherwise be reproduced as low-frequency aliases or false signals. 45D. And 46, what is a microphonic? Well, it can be changes in oscillator frequency caused by mechanical vibration. You tap on the oscillator circuit and it changes frequency. Whoops. 46C. And 47, what happens to reactive power in ideal inductors and capacitors? Ideal. Energy is stored in magnetic or electric fields and power is not dissipated. 47B. And 48, what impedance does a 1/8 wave transmission line present to an RF generator when the line is open at the far end? That's a capacitive reactance. You can build capacitors that way if you need them in an emergency. 48C. And 49, what is the magnitude of the impedance in a parallel RLC circuit at resonance? Well, it's approximately equal to the circuit resistance, the R part of that. The L and C kind of go away, so 49A. And 50, what is the modulation index of an FM signal? It is the ratio of frequency deviation to modulating signal frequency, 50A. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end. Again, you needed to get 74%, no more than 13 wrong. When you get your amateur radio extra class license, and I know you will, just keep in mind that you have a responsibility to the community. Please, help others as they proceed in the hobby. Be an Elmer, a mentor, whatever you want to call it. If you can, share resources and do unto others as you would have them do unto you. One thing we would ask, please, is to tell others about our channel. Our classes are always free. We have upcoming in January more classes for the technician or the beginning amateur radio license and the general class if folks want to upgrade from technician to general. And they can just send me an email and I'll be happy to get them on that list, or go ahead and get in touch with me. And then after you pass your test, and I know you will, if you wanted to, you could make a donation to us. We don't charge for the class, but we do have expenses, and so you can go to my website, w4eey.com, and there's a PayPal donation button there, or on YouTube even. If you go to any of our YouTube videos, there's a super thanks button. If you just click on that, it's a way that you could help us to buy more equipment or other things that we need for future videos and future classes. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the end. It's the end of the class. Let me go over here to our computer and let me take away the spotlight. Let me turn it over to my cohort, Dave. Dave Ivy's with us in the Zoom classroom. Dave, did you have any thoughts or final comments?
Just as you're going through these practice tests, and take lots of them, write down the ones that you get wrong so that you won't get them wrong again. That's been a real key for some of the folks, so I'll throw that out as a suggestion.
Great. Any comments or questions before we go?
Yeah, how long? Totally appreciate it, but how long are the notes and everything available on the Dropbox?
They should be there forever. Although I think now there's a difficulty with ones from the previous class. I don't know what happened to them. So I'm going to have to go put them back. I was just recently told about that. So, but
that's
no.
I was trying to get the previous information for the other classes, and I did go to the previous class you taught in 2024, and they were gone.
What happened, just a little inside baseball, for some folks on Dropbox, if they wanted to access the files through their Dropbox app, I would give them permission. And early on, I didn't realize what I was doing, and I gave them full permission. And so sometimes instead of copying the files, they moved the files
Yeah.
from Dropbox to theirs. I thought I had that all straightened around, but it looks like it happened again.
Okay, thank
So,
you.
yeah, we'll get that back. But yeah, you've been a great class, very interested, good questions. I'm just so happy, and you can do it. And let us know. Send us an email back, and stay in touch. If you're going to be at Hamcation in Orlando, we should all be there. If you're going to be in Hamvention in Dayton, Ohio, we're planning on being there. And I want to thank this guy over here, my cohort in crime, who's pushing the buttons, Bruce back there, who's got a new call sign, Alpha Alpha 4 Echo. Yay! But anyway, Bruce is a stalwart. He's been here all the time, helping us out. And at the salary I pay him, I don't know how that's possible. Anyway, thank you all, and we'll be in touch, and we'll see you on the bands. 73, y'all.
Look, guys.